Good afternoon, boys and girls, and welcome to episode 54 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, coming to you today from YouTube. A very, very special episode because even though it is technically episode 54 of Love at First Scent, it is actually part one of looking at these guys, the best perfumes of the decade. Obviously, according to yours truly. Hello from Colombo, says Tushara. Hello back to you as well. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, by the way. Or is it Tushara? Do I actually have to say the th? And let me just go on to the YouTube app to make sure that you can see me properly. I never know exactly how things look until I see them on here, because what I see in front of me isn't exactly what you're seeing. It's a little bit annoying when it comes to setting things up, but I think it looks all right. I think what you can't see, though, is that I've lit the little candles in these ornaments because I thought they would give things a festive glow, but that obviously hasn't worked at all. Never mind. Okay. Comment as well from Fahmi. Hello from Indonesia. Nice to see you again, sir. Always very, very nice to be seen. Yes, correct, says... Yeah, but which one was correct? Is it Tushar or Thushar? I don't know which one's correct now. Okay, so what's the plan for today? Obviously, this is a slightly different episode of Love at First Scent from the usual ones, because we're not going to be smelling anything that I haven't tried before. Far from it. We're going to be smelling things that actually I have smelled many, many times before and that I know and love. Not all of these, obviously. I don't intend to keep you here for more than about 3/4 of an hour or an hour. But the idea behind this is that is to tie in with the best perfumes of the decade blog post that came out just about a week ago. On Persolaise.com, I published part one. Good afternoon from Stockholm. Exciting topic today, says Vitaly. Yes, absolutely. And hello from Yorkshire, says Right Glory BG. Thank you very much for tuning in. The blog post, 6 a.m. in West Coast Canada. 6 a.m. and you've tuned in on a Sunday. I'm very, very grateful, Mystery Forms. Are you not beta anymore, Mystery Forms, by the way? Did you ditch the beta? I decided to split my best perfumes of the decade post into two parts because otherwise it would have been too long. So part one had 20 perfumes. Good morning, Christy, as well to you. And we're going to smell some of them here. The second part of the blog post is going to appear within the next few days. And bonjour from Neil, says Lynn Smells. Bonjour to you as well. Thank you for tuning in. The second part of the blog post will appear within the next couple of days. I would have thought certainly Tuesday at the very, very latest. And then we will also do a video to go with that. Max, is that really you, or have you done something to your avatar? Anyway, morning all, says Floating Man. Hello everybody. Lots of people tuned in, so hopefully this means we're going to get a bit of a good debate going. There will be a part two of this video to go with the part two of the blog post over on the blog as well. So what else can I say? Please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already done so. Thumbs up are very, very welcome. What's even more welcome is comments, because it's the interaction that makes all of this really, really interesting. And also please consider supporting my work on the site ko-fi.com, kofi.com. There's always a link below the videos. If you like the idea of doing that supporting on Ko-fi thing, check out kofi.com, by the way, to find out what it is. Then all of that is very much appreciated as well. Or you could just leave a comment on the blog. Samuel says hello from Portugal. So we're not doing too badly. We've got West Coast Canada, Virginia, France, Portugal, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. It's pretty good going, I think, people. Thank you for tuning in. So I thought the best thing to do would be to actually tell you which 20 perfumes are in the first part of my rundown of the best perfumes of the decade. I know you could just go on the blog and check them out for yourself, and obviously I will link to that blog post at the end of this video as well, but a lot of you who follow me on YouTube don't follow me on the blog, and vice versa. And we've got Singapore, because Angeline has just tuned in and taken things even further east. So thank you very much for tuning in. So, for the sake of completeness and for the sake of doing things properly, these are the perfumes that appeared in the first part of my rundown of the best perfumes of the decade. Please feel free to disagree, chip in the second part of the blog post, the one that's coming up in the next couple of days. There will actually be an opportunity for you to nominate your own personal favourites. But anyway, in the order in which they appear on the blog, the first 20 perfumes on my list of the best perfumes of the decade 2010 to 2019 are Portrait of a Lady from Frederic Malle, Apsu by Ulrich Lang. I'm ignoring that comment. Serapio. Leather Oud from Christian Dior, Black Pepper from Comme des Garçons, Opus 5 from Amouage, Trayee from Neela Vermeire, The Afternoon of a Faun from Etat Libre d'Orange, Absolu pour le Soir from Francis Kurkdjian, Santal 33 from Le Labo, Anima Dulcis from Arquiste, Candy from Prada, Orange Star from Tower Perfumes, Seville à l'Aube, Seville at Dawn from L'Artisan Parfumeur, Cuir d'Ange from Hermès, Panorama from Olfactive Studio, Bakelite Nights or Nuit de Bakelite from Naomi Goodser, sorry, forgot for a second, Womanity from Thierry Mugler, Boy from Chanel, The Scent of Freedom from Lush, although when that came out, it came out under the Guerrilla Perfumes banner, and Galop from Hermès, or Galop d'Hermès, or Gallop, the one that you can see over here. So that's 20. A few comments here. People laughing at Aventus. Please say Aventus is not on the list. No, Aventus is most certainly not on my list. But who knows? Maybe it'll be on the second part of the list. What do you people think? Perhaps Viking is on the list, says Fahmi. Yeah, perhaps. Absolu pour le Soir is a dream, amazing perfume rather than an Amazon perfume. Well, it sounds stupid to say, yes, I love it, because otherwise I wouldn't have chosen it as one of the best perfumes of the decade. How would you have gone about choosing a perfume? As I said on the actual blog post, I was pleasantly surprised by how difficult it was to choose the perfumes. And at first I thought that maybe I would just restrict the choices to 20. Any oils or perfumes from Arabian houses, says Floating Man. Well, you have to wait for part 2 to find out. Artisanal ouds or musks, again, you'll have to wait for part 2 to find out, but I shouldn't say anything. And when I started drawing up the list, I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to stick it, to keep it to 20. And so then I decided to maybe go to 30, and in the end we have got a little bit more than 30. Absolu pour le Soir is honey cake plus male undercarriage. Amazing! Why did they discontinue it? Because maybe they didn't use male undercarriage in their description. I don't know whether it's over there, by the way, my bottle of Absolu pour le Soir. You can see there's not a huge amount left in it. Whether it's officially discontinued, somebody could go on the Francis Kurkdjian site right now and see if it's listed, because the last time I interviewed him, he said that he would keep it available at his boutique, but I don't know if that's still the case. I mean, I know that it hasn't been as commercially successful as maybe he would have hoped, so that he could keep the production going, and that's how these things go sometimes. But anyway, we need to smell some perfumes. So what I thought we would do is just smell maybe 4 or 5 of the ones that we've got here, which are some of the ones in part 1 of the list. And if there is one absolute favourite that I have from the whole decade, because I couldn't put them into any kind of order except for number 1, because I'm very, very, very clear in my mind what is number 1. Great choices all round, by the way, so far, says Dream of Mina. Thank you very much. Although, you know, disagreements are welcome and interesting, and, you know, your own nominations. I think maybe we might get some disagreements when I actually publish part 2, because people will start saying things like, you know, oh yeah, how come you didn't include this? How come you didn't include it, etc., etc., etc. But I do have a favourite of the decade, and you're not going to be surprised to discover what it is. My favourite of the decade is this. It is Dominique Ropion's Portrait of a Lady for Frederic Malle. It qualifies for this list because it came out in 2010, towards the latter part of 2010. I still remember the first time I tried it thinking, this really is something special. It's also become special in a personal level. Is that a special edition? Yes, it is. But I've forgotten what did it come out last Christmas or the Christmas before? It may have been 2 Christmases ago. Some of the more popular ones in the line, the better selling ones, had a sort of conceptual color blob thing, technical description there, color blob thing, put onto the bottles. I think they did it with carnal flower, and it was only on 100 mils. Just last Christmas, says Angeline. Was it? So, okay, round of applause to Madame Persolaise, because this is her bottle. She's been very, very good. This is her signature scent, but she knows that it isn't exactly the cheapest scent that Persolaise can get from Madame Persolaise. Wonderful choice to have Portrait of a Lady by Frederic Malle. And good evening, says Rizwan. So, yeah, although you don't need a huge amount of it. So, as I was saying, the reason why personally it's become important as well is she made quite a dent. What? No, she hasn't. It's barely like a third gone. What do you think? Is because it is Madame Persolaise's perfume. So as soon as I spray this, it's going to be as though she walked into the room, even though she's not exactly far away. She's just on the other side of the door. The story is, though, and I'm not sure how many people I've told this, that I originally bought it for myself on a trip to Paris in 2010. And then Madame Persolaise smelt it and basically just took one look at me and said, if you think that's going to be your perfume, you've got another thing coming. I don't expect it to be Portrait of a Lady, says P. Sebu. Which one did you expect it to be? Lynn smells, don't test my French, hang on. As a conservative consumer? Do you mean she is a conservative consumer? And Floating Man says, how do you rate this decade in terms of perfumery? Do you not think IFRA affected the latter half of it in a negative way? Very interesting question. Thank you for that. Maybe we can take like a sort of 2-minute pause after we've smelt some of these and talk about that. I'd be interested in your views, but I'm now just surrounded by this really, it still really is a tremendous, special piece of work. Is there anybody out there who has watching this, either live or after the live broadcast, who has not yet smelt Portrait of a Lady? If you haven't, the simple way to describe it is to say that it is a rose, a really overdosed rose with lots and lots of incense, lots of patchouli in the base, and a sort of red berryish, pepperish top. Portrait of a Lady is my signature too, says Dream of Me No More. Good choice. Have you tried The Night by Frederic Malle, says Serapio. Yes, I did, and a few years ago, and I love it, and there is a review on my blog. And I should say no more, because part 2 of the list of the best perfumes of the decade is coming out on the blog in a few days. But what is it that makes this so special? I've always stayed away from it, to be honest, because of the rose, says Floating Man. Fair enough, yes, and there are plenty of people out there who don't like it because of the rose. A lot of people don't like it because of the patchouli. Carnal Flower, says Right Glory BG. Yes, I have now taken Carnal Flower for myself. Madame Persolaise is not allowed to have that one, even though actually she is more of a sort of rose person than a tuberose person. And I enjoy wearing Carnal Flower, but that is sort of pre-2010 anyway. Haven't smelt Portrait of a Lady, says Ula. Not a big fan of either rose or patchouli. Then, yeah, you would struggle, although you would probably be able to appreciate the fact that it is an amazing it is an amazing patchouli rose. And hang on, missing comments. Greetings from Slovakia, says Ula. Thank you very much. Tashara says, I'd prefer rose. And hang on, I've just lost a little bit here. Is it in any way similar to Lyric Man, says Floating Man? No, Lyric Man is woodier and more overtly masculine. This has got a much stronger, cleaner incense note. I'm sort of lost for words, and I should actually. Lyric Man's is citric rose, says Serapio. Yes, thank you. A better way of putting it, because that's a rose I can tolerate, says Floating Man. You might like this. I'm not really lost. I'm sort of lost for words because I'm smelling it and I'm overwhelmed by how amazing it is. you can just go to persolaise.com and actually see what the write-up was for this one. But I just love its grandeur. From the very, very first moment I smelled it, I thought, this is big, it's bolshy, it takes no prisoners, it's a real statement perfume. And it has become a modern classic. Lots of perfume brands have tried to copy it. None have managed it in quite the same way as Frederic Malle, and it's been a huge success for the brand. It would be interesting at this point, Jessie says one of my favourites too, yeah, I don't blame you, to actually see what the site says about it. I've got a little bit of sort of blurby press information. Frederic Malle publicity information is usually quite good. You get quite a lot of mileage out of it. So they say elegance personified. I think it's more than elegance though, because it's got real curves. You know, it's got danger, this perfume. Consider perfume a portrait of its wearer. The sound of her voice, her gaze, the way she plays cards, at once timeless and resonant with today. Here is a scent that speaks of her innate sophistication, charm that emanates from within, boldly depicted without, an expressive portrayal of modern grace, elegance personified. And why do they just repeat that text again? Never mind. At the fore, an exuberant dose of Turkish rose, 400 flowers per 100 ml bottle, no less. I suppose if they're saying it, it must be true. Beneath, a bed of patchouli heart imbued with sandalwood and frankincense, and a cord of clove, blackcurrant and raspberry binds the perfume together for a final, characterful brushstroke. Lady in profile. I think easily one of the best things that Dominique Ropion has ever done. The best perfume from the Frederic Malle range. And it's as on paper, it's the berries being made cooler and contemplative with the incense, but the rose bringing in the sensuality. And the patchouli also is very, very clean. This is not an earthy, dirty patchouli, and a really, really excellent use of musks. It is extraordinary. It really, really is extraordinary. I missed a comment from Dream of Me No More. Belgravia Chypre is like it. Absolutely. From Penhaligon's. But not as good musks and a bit thinner. Yeah, I think more than a bit thinner. I agree. Portrait of a Lady is a take no prisoners perfume, requires a certain personality to wear. Well, for a while it was mine, and then Madame Persolaise took it away from me. I think we should move on. So that's my absolute favourite of the decade. But you know, there are lots and lots of others that I loved. By the way, do you want me to do a blotter update on these for people who comment? Own and love Poudre Levedi, but I would give first place to Carnal Flower. Fair enough. Dominique Ropion is my favourite perfumer. He is amazing. For those of you who aren't aware, when I do these episodes with perfumes that we haven't smelt before, a couple of hours after the initial broadcast, I do what we've started calling a blotter update, which is when in the comment section I actually say how the perfumes have developed over the passage of time, because of course we shouldn't judge the perfumes just on a first sniff. But these are all ones that you know. So Tashara says please do a blotter update. Well, maybe I will do a little bit of a blotter update. I didn't pose for thumbnail with this one, by the way. Okay, next I would like to do something really completely different, but I was taken with it. So this is from 2016, if I can just pull it out here. How many of you know this? I would venture to say that maybe not as many of you know this as know Portrait of a Lady. Now this is a perfume, as you can see, from the New York-based brand Ulrich Lang, and it's called Apsu. Again, it was one of those moments when I first, Umberto says bonjour, when I first tried it, I thought, this is pretty interesting, this is pretty amazing, I think this is going to be love at first scent. Not that I've worn it very much, but I have worn it. This was a really, really wonderful modern take on green. I don't know whether you can, no, you probably can't see the packaging, but the colour of the label gives you a hint. Interesting brand, by the way, Ulrich Lang. I may not be crazy about all of his perfumes. I just wish he would say who his perfumers are. He doesn't. I suppose somebody out there must know. I hope the perfumers know that they're the perfumers. He likes to maintain. Where should we put that? Should we put that there for a sec so you can see it? He likes to maintain the anonymity of his perfumers because I think he wants the perfumes to be seen as a sort of vision of his own. And has anybody out there tried it? Please do let me know if you have. It's every single time I smell it, and I haven't smelt it for a while, but it's the most intriguing, extraordinary opening because you get a real sense of banana peel, banana skin, but green banana, unripe banana, and also, please bear with me, not in a bad way, because banana can. Oh, Dream of Me No More says it's about the only one on your list I haven't tried, so we'll be doing so. Yes, and please let me know what you think of it. I love green scents, says Floating. Yeah, when they're done well, they are really, really special. So don't sort of go, I don't like the idea of a banana perfume, because it's banana that's kind of been spiked with freshly cut grass and a scattering of white pepper. And what was really, really curious about this, the very first time I tried it was actually the one and only time I've been to the Pitti perfume exhibition in Florence that takes place once a year. I went once a few years ago. I kind of felt I didn't need to go again for a little while. But this was where I first tried Apsu, and I was immediately taken with it because it was genuinely, properly, convincingly aquatic, without for a moment making you think that it's got those horrible ozonic marine notes, things like kalone, and it really works. Hello, I'm late, says Paul whatever. You're fine. Better late than never, Paul whatever. There are a lot of new people here today. Are a lot of you new? Have you sort of been watching but not commenting and lurking? Anyway, you're very welcome. Thanks for tuning in. And that's what I loved about this. I'm in a fairly cold room at the moment, and I have to say this is working beautifully in these cold surroundings. Ozonic can be tricky to get right, says Floating Man. Absolutely, and I think this gets it spot on. There are shades of Garlin Herba Fresca by Mathilde Laurent, the sort of green mintiness, not the chewing gum sweetness that the Herba Fresca goes to. And it's also, I should say, serene. So this is a perfectly still lake, maybe in a Japanese garden. There isn't a breath of wind in the air, and the water is so still that it's acting as a sort of mirror. You can see a perfect reflection of everything that is above the lake, so to speak. And it is tranquility itself. If there were ever a candle made of this, I would absolutely love to have it. Floating Man says, which I find quite addictive but quite austere. No, hang on. You retracted your message. Maybe you meant to say something else. So make up your mind about what you want to say. I guess you made a mistake. This is what the Ulrich Lang site says about it. The name Apsu, used in mythology for fresh water, not sure which mythology, hints to the watery notes found in the composition of the perfume. The fragrance was developed with the concept of uniting minimalism with freshness. Apsu is more of a scent than a heavy, complex fragrance, a nod to a simpler lifestyle not easily found in today's complex world. It may be simple, but it is really, really not simplistic. There is a lot of work that's gone in here, I think, to give you this impression of simplicity. Apsu grabs your attention instantly, totally, with its bright blend of lush green notes drenched in clear water. Top notes consist of crunchy greens mixed with sunny bergamot to capture the lush and vibrant spirit of nature and water in warmer climates. Middle notes consist of white tea, yeah, okay, I'll go along with that, dewy jasmine and iris, making the scent sophisticated, clean and inviting. Rounding out the scent is a smooth, sensual blend of white musk, frankincense and amber-like woods that creates warmth and adheres to skin. Apsu redefines freshness, which is quite a claim to make, but I wouldn't argue, because in this decade it kind of did. From what I If you were to guess the perfumer, who would it be? Oh no, I wouldn't even try. No, sorry. The other one that is, I mentioned Panorama from Olfactive Studio. That also was a sort of redefinition of freshness, but in a completely different way, because Panorama is really electric and spicy and burny. You know, it's got a sort of wasabi note. I see Gallo on the table, says Tim Wilcox. Absolutely, that's because it's on the list. And other notes that are on the Ulrich Lang website are things like cilantro, which is interesting. I think there is that kind of effect in there. Violet leaf, absolutely. Pimento berries. So if you haven't had the opportunity to try Apsu from Ulrich Lang, please do, because I would imagine a lot of you will like it, especially if you like green scents. Okay, we're 2 in. So for those of you who've just tuned in, this is part 1 of my look at some of the best perfumes of the decade according to yours truly, and this is to tie in with the blog post that is on persolaise.com. The blog post is also part 1 of my rundown of the best perfumes of the decade. Part 2 will appear on the blog within the next few days, and then a few days after that we'll do a part 2 of the video. So I hope that makes sense. A link to the blog post will be below the video later on, as well as links to places where you can support my work, social media channels, etc., etc. But please keep the questions coming. Now, I forget who it was, but somebody a few minutes ago asked me for a kind of rundown. Oh, one Dior on the list, says Tashara. Yes, Leather Oud. You can just see a tiny little sample there. And somebody asked what my take was on the decade as a whole. And when I did the blog post, I didn't want to get bogged down with really, really detailed thoughts on what the decade was like, because once I started thinking about it, I thought, well, I probably could write a whole dissertation. Bonjour from Paris, by the way, says Chang Lu. Exciting to see you. I have tough time with green scents. That's okay. That's fine. Boy, says Umberto. Does that mean you've just seen the Chanel? But on the blog post, I did a few paragraphs summing up what I thought of the decade. I think the decade started better than it finished. When I look at my overall list, I know what's on part 2 of the list, it looks as though there were quite a few things from 2010, 2011, 2012. I think the most recent one that I've got on the list is 2018 from memory. So I may turn out to be wrong, although I'm pretty sure I'm right. I don't think anything from 2019 has gone on my list of the best perfumes of the decade. Although that may also be a reflection of my character, because I like to sort of mull over these things and actually spend some time with them. By the way, there will also be a list of the best perfumes of the year in the usual way. That'll appear on the blog closer to the end of the year, and we'll do a video of that on that as well. But I think there was a feeling that the independent brands were pushing boundaries a little bit more at the start of the decade, maybe trying to be bolder, maybe trying to be more exciting, more adventurous. Quite a few new brands started as well. I think on the table here you can see at least 2. Am I right? Yeah, there are 2 new brands that appeared in the last decade. And by the way, in part 2 of the blog post, I also do a rundown of what I think are the 10 best new brands. What would you wear for Christmas, says Right. I'll tell you in a second, because I know the exact answer to that. So just remind me if I forget to answer you. And then the 2 brands I'm talking about are Arquiste and Neela Vermeire. I think they were 2 of the best brands that emerged in the last decade. And then maybe part way through the decade, maybe around about 2014, 2015, 2016, when the market started to stagnate a little bit, the independent sector became a bit more fearful, and I think releases started becoming less interesting, less brave. I mean, obviously there were still good perfumes being released. Umberto Palatin says HR for Christmas, guessing perfume-wise. If you mean Habit Rouge, then you know me far too well, because yes, absolutely, Christmas Day has to be an Habit Rouge day. And did I miss that comment from, oh, hang on, I'm a little bit confused. I don't know. Oh, quite a number of acquisitions. Yes, Angeline, absolutely. Thank you very much. So, Frederic Malle was bought by Estee Lauder. Le Labo was taken over by Estee Lauder. L'Oreal bought quite a lot of brands over the decade. LVMH started looking at perfume brands. How many perfumes did Jérôme Épinette bring out in the decade? I shall look. Oh yeah, well then they'll be the ones that will be listed. And I think the acquisitions, the stagnation of the market, led to a feeling of wanting to play things a bit safe, of sort of pulling back. But the question was also specifically about IFRA. Did IFRA spoil things? That's such a huge issue, really, because a lot of people will also actually say that IFRA made things more interesting, that IFRA caused people to seek novel solutions to problems, and we cannot dismiss, the possibility, we have to acknowledge this, folks, that maybe, shocking as it may sound, IFRA actually did us a favour by making sure that things that were potential allergens or potential carcinogens, etc., weren't in the products that we apply on skin. I mean, I know that is potentially a very, very controversial thing to say, and in many instances the jury is still out, and there are problems with how certain materials get placed on the IFRA standards list. But there are a lot of the essential oils can be dangerous, especially if they are not used well. If they're ingested, if they're not used in the correct way. We know that the way they're metabolized can cause certain problems. We now know that there are problems also with certain musks, which is why some brands don't like to use certain musks because of the way they're broken down or not broken down, etc., etc. There is information about all of this on the internet, so I think it's too simplistic and too easy to just label IFRA as the bad guys. Certainly, I think you could say that maybe they take a somewhat heavy-handed approach, but that's an argument for another time, I think. And I forget who, I didn't catch the name, but somebody sort of said, can't they just put a warning on the packaging? Yes, they could, and yes, to some extent they do. But I think even with a warning, they're not going to. Then they're not going to put something out there that they knowingly think is dangerous. DB70 says, I think Mugler just went to L'Oreal. Do you mean Mugler or Prada? Certainly I think Prada went to L'Oreal, which is, I will say it, I think it's a shame because most of the brands that have gone over to L'Oreal have not done fantastically, except for the really high-end ones, like Armani Privé, are fine, but YSL, not so much. I missed a few comments. David says, saw an interview with Sarah McCartney at 4160 Tuesdays, which clarified a lot about IFRA and left me seeing the organisation in a much less negative light. Yeah, see, I think it is a bit too simplistic to just say that they're evil and they're baddies. And by the way, if you could find that interview again, please leave a link to it in a comment. I think everybody else here would be very fascinated to watch it as well. Dream of Me No More says, it looks like Jérôme Épinette was the perfumer behind about 80 to 90 perfumes in the decade. Possible. David again says, also notable, she mentioned that the allowed amount of oak moss is enough to make a composition overwhelmingly oak mossy. Interesting. Making me think the lack of moss in recent decades is a stylistic choice. Yeah, it really, really isn't as straightforward as saying, oh, those horrible IFRA people not letting me use as much jasmine as I want to use, or eugenol or whatever. But if I had to sum up the decade in just a couple of sentences, I think I would say interesting at the start, much more fearful towards the end, and oud. I mean, oud really was the ingredient of the decade, whether it was real or not, and unsurprisingly, a few oud scents made it onto my list of the best perfumes of the decade. Jessie says, I think the 4160 interview was on Wafts from the Lofts YouTube channel. Well, then maybe you could find it, or maybe I can find it. You know, I have no issue with things from other people's channels being linked onto mine. Was it not the decade of the fruituli? Yes, absolutely. And I mentioned that in the mainstream, it was the decade of the fruituli sugar bomb. For men, it was the decade of the woody abrasive ambers and all of that kind of thing. Floating Man says, I think it also depends on the style of perfume you enjoy. For example, for a lover of animalic, beastly perfumes, IFRA's regulations were not welcome. Yeah, potentially. But I can respect it if it's done for health and environmental reasons. Yes, although there are also, lots of beastly synthetics out there. Maybe one day we need to do a video where we just talk about this kind of thing. But for now, I think we should move on, because it is about smelling perfumes. And what else could I do? Oh, I must smell this, because this was also one of my favourites of the decade. Which is, sorry, this is such a redundant thing to say. They're all of my favourites of the decade, but you know what I mean. And this was, I think, one of the original bottles in which it appeared, because this brand now, which is, of course, Neela Vermeire Creations, have updated their bottle. The bottle is still recognisably this, but it looks maybe a bit more streamlined, a bit more elegant. This was also back in the day when the spray pump, favoritist, says Dream of... Yeah, you get what I mean. The spray pump was optional. This is Trayee from Neela Vermeire Creations, composed by Bertrand Duchaufour. Duchaufour is still the only person who's composed all of the perfumes for this particular brand. I'm only looking here because I've made a little note of when it was released. Again, 2011. Trayee is amazing, says Jessie. I'm so pleased you agree. Let us smell it. Oh, here we go. And I haven't got the spray thing here, so I'm just going to dip a blotter into... Does it reach? Yes, it does. And let us just completely seal this off, the precious juice. And the room, by the way, is smelling amazing now. When you've got Portrait of a Lady and Apsu and now Trayee. Trayee was part of a trio, the debut trio that Neela Vermeire released. A lot of people haven't tried their perfumes yet because they are still in quite limited distributions. My favourite perfumer, is it an incense, says Floating Man. It is so not just one thing. It is one of the richest perfumes he's ever made. Yet to try her collection. Trayee and Bombay Bling sound amazing. Yes, they are not always easy to find. You can always contact them through their brands to see if they might be able to, sell you some samples to whichever part of the world you happen to live in. Not the easiest perfumes to get hold of. Neela is very lovely and Trayee is lovely, but I prefer that style of Duchaufour perfume when it's a bit cheaper because of it being a bit thinner. Interesting. Oh, and going back to the other thing, Mugler and Azzaro, so I heard, but it could... Well, you may be right. I think L'Oreal were trying to acquire them. If Mugler go to... anyway, we're getting sidetracked. This is... Oh, it's just... And again, I haven't smelt it for a little while. Duchaufour is brilliant at balance, at legibility. So you smell his perfumes and you get this holistic, symphonic, orchestral sound, but you also can shut your eyes and see precisely where all of the instruments have been placed, and you can hear them. So it's the perfume equivalent of hearing something in a space that has got the most incredible acoustics you can imagine. So you smell this and you do get a wholeness, and the wholeness is just pure richness and majesty. It is a very, very royal smelling perfume, and yeah, it's all and it's golden, beautiful regal robes, but you can also pick up the jasmine and the cardamom and the cinnamon. Great description. In the soft spot, says Lynn, smells sweet spot. You mean though, don't you? Sweet spot. Yes, it is the sort of olfactory sweet spot. And I've forgotten what I said. Rose, absolutely. Incense. It's just. I just love Trayee so much. But then I love all of these. Trayee is India in a bottle in the best possible sense, says Ula. Yeah, I'm so pleased you agree. Sounds wonderful, must try it. Oh, it is just, it is very, very rich though. You know, somebody else just said a few minutes ago that they prefer du Chauffour scents that maybe are a little bit toned down. You know, there is nothing toned down about this. This is, you know, all of the most amazing colours of the silks of saris and all of the beautiful spices of the foods and the milky, creamy cardamom sweetness of Indian sweets and desserts. I remember when I first smelt it, I thought that the sandalwood thing was doing something a little bit like Guerlain's Samsara, which is, does it invoke a meditative state? No. This is the one that's for me is more meditative from this brand is Ashoka. Comes across as slightly fruity to me, but no particular fruit, says Jessie. Yeah, I guess so. You know, maybe almost something quince-like. I don't know. The descriptions on the Neela Vermeire site are interesting too. So let's take a look at those. The Vedic tradition suggests that wisdom is eternal. It exists within the eternal fabric of consciousness itself and is uncreated. It is the essence of India, the beginning of the journey. It is a eulogy, a hymn to the idea of India, an act of deepest reverence for the traditions of the mother country. The divine origin of the first three Vedas, I'm going to not pronounce them correctly, Rig, Yajur and Sama, suggested the name of the perfume, Trayee, meaning the triad. Trayee is a complex fragrance that represents the boundless spiritual landscape of the great Vedic period, which started many centuries ago. Its intricate rituals and temple ceremonies, Ayurveda, the universe of yoga and the holistic quest for knowledge. The perfume itself has a high percentage of natural ingredients used in many of the Vedic ceremonies. And yes, I think that's worth sort of mentioning that when you smell this, you do get a sense of incredibly rich naturalness. And Dream of Me No More says, I have joined you in wearing Trayee. Fantastic. Is it a very busy scent, says Floating Man? Well, I think I would just go back to that orchestra analogy. There is a lot going on here, but it is so not a mess, you know. Is it busy? No, it's just rich, you know, rich is the word. It's not busy, it's not overly fussy. You can wear it with great comfort and ease, but you also know that you're wearing something incredibly detailed and rich and, well, just downright gorgeous. That's only the third one we've smelled. We need to get a move on because I thought we might get 5 in easily, but we're at the 42-minute mark. Another one that I thought let's do a Chanel. Let's do a Chanel. Everybody likes a bit of Chanel every now and then, because from the interaction on Instagram when I mentioned that I did this one, there seemed to be quite a bit of surprise with a lot of people on Instagram saying, "Oh my goodness, I really love this one too, but I didn't think anybody else did." And I think this perfume, here it is, it's Chanel's Boy from their exclusive collection. When they, you know, after, sounds right up my street then, says Floating Man. Yeah, potentially. This is Boy from Chanel. Already the exclusives had gone over to the eau de parfum concentrations, which a lot of people are not fans of, I think in many cases for understandable reasons. But this only ever existed as an eau de parfum made by Olivier Polge. And I think this is Chanel at its best. Yes, okay, in this decade we also had Bleu de Chanel, which I'm sure was a huge hit, but to me was not Chanel at its best. Gabrielle, forgettably fine, I suppose. I thought the essence was better, but they did give us some good things from their exclusives range, and I thought this was the best one. Olivier Polge is perhaps still best known for having made the original Dior Homme, which was, you know, a great perfume, but also quite famous for being a bit of a gender bender, in the best possible way, in the most interesting possible way. And I think Boy continues that style, because it is high. It's just it. You know, in the way that a Trayee is fantastically just large, huge, you know, it is immense and beautiful. Boy is beautiful, but it's also really, really quiet and elegant and restrained. It's the kind of perfume. It's the perfume equivalent of, if you're going out of an evening with somebody and they're wearing more the sort of showstopper outfit and you don't want to steal the limelight from them, then you'll just go for something very, very simply sophisticated and unostentatious. I think that's what this is. And in terms of its structure, it's a fougère because it's got that really, really great lavender geranium note over a sort of quietly mossy base, but it's got just enough sweetness in it to make it possible to sort of veer into the feminine side of things, which is why it's interesting that it's called Boy. And of course that ties in with the story because it was named after the person that historians now tell us was Chanel's the love of her life, and his nickname was Boy. But it's also quite an interesting name for a perfume anyway, because it's boy as opposed to man, and maybe it is like a fougère for a more boyish figure rather than a more overtly manly figure. It just works. Very, very gently, powdery, lavendery, soapy, herbal, just the right amount of diffusion. As I said, it doesn't shout, it doesn't scream, but it is definitely there. It just worked. It just worked. I missed a few comments. What have I missed? Salam from Azerbaijan, says Harry. Well, sorry, I can't go back, but you can go back after the broadcast and watch it all. Underrated, says Umberto. Yes, I thought it was as well, but here we are, rating it, calling it one of the best of the decade. Bleu is not a masterpiece, says David, but the deluge of Bleu scents that came in its wake leave Bleu's virtues clearer in hindsight. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's not Sauvage, is it? Thank goodness. Dream of Me No More says, the problem I have with Chanel fragrances nowadays is that I can read the press release and the list of notes and completely predict how it will smell in the case of the exclusives. Interesting. So no surprises, you mean, which is a shame because we do want our perfumes to surprise us. What Guerlain is there, says T Rose. Well, in the list that I read out at the start of the video, there were no Guerlains, but part 2 of my list of the best perfumes of the decade comes out on the blog in a few days. I'm not saying that there is definitely going to be a Guerlain on there, but that's when part 2 of the list comes out. Umberto says too masculine for females and too feminine for boys, some people say, maybe. I Wait, the fragrance named after the SS officer Coco shacked up with at the... Yes, well, I think we all do, and somebody always comes in with the kind of, and do we know what Chanel did during the war? I know, and I actually read a whole very, very interesting book about it over the summer. I forget what it's called, but it was something like Life in the Riviera, but I know. History is a complicated tapestry. Arkadiusz says, I have a great aromatic fougère recommendation for you, and it's super cheap. Savile Row by Richard James. I think this one is right up your alley. Okay, thank you very much. I shall have to look it up. Why do you ask about Guerlain? It is Persolaise's list, not yours, says T Rose. Well, maybe they just like Guerlain. Floating Man says, have you tried the EDP of Coromandel? Ran out of my EDT and haven't been able to try it. I think I did, but I don't remember a huge amount about it. I mean, in a lot of cases, the EDTs have more room to breathe, don't they? But is that because they were the first ones we tried and we fell in love with them? I mean, I really, really love the EDT of Coromandel. The EDT of the Russian leather of Pierre de Russie is I think, probably superior to the EDP. It's like they just made them bulkier, the EDPs, I think, which is a bit of a shame. What about number 5, Low, says Angeline. I thought it was fine. I mean, I wouldn't put it on my list of one of the best of the decade. There you go, Tim is helping us out here. He was Arthur Boy Capel, a polo player and Coco's lover, died in a car crash in 1919. Is Mugler there, says T Rose. Well, go on the blog because or watch the video again from the beginning is all I'm saying. Dream of Me No More says, I have the EDT of Coromandel. I tried the EDP but can't really recall as had a cold at the time. From what I have heard, Coromandel is the least problematic of the conversions. Fair enough. And very quickly, let us see what Chanel say about Boy. Drawing inspiration from the inseparable bond between Gabrielle Chanel and Boy Capel, the botanical and woody accents of Boy Chanel create a unique fragrance that transcends gender. A lot of perfumes do, by the way, but never mind. Boy Chanel presents a lavender and geranium accord heightened with exquisite notes of wood, a fragrance that transcends gender and illustrates a personality. Illustrates a personality. It's a funny way of putting it. In her younger days, Gabrielle Chanel met Arthur Boy Capel, an elegant British polo player. He was the love of her life and the first to encourage her to pursue her creative endeavours. Inspired by his sophisticated style, Gabrielle imagined women dressed in tweed with short boyish hair and flat shoes, designs that mixed genders, the beginnings of unisex fashion. She was certainly, nothing if not a complicated genius. Sycamore is no more, says Dream of Me No More. You like a bombast. Sycamore, I think I tried that and again thought EDT was probably work better, even though I've always had a problem with the dry down of Sycamore. So, because we are 10 minutes away from the top of the hour, and I absolutely told myself that I'm not going to go longer than an hour, I think, let me quickly look at my list. It's hard to choose, but let's do the Etat Libre d'Orange, because I was really taken with this as well when it came out. Here, there you go, and it's The Afternoon of a Faun, which came out in 2012, composed by Ralph Schwieger, one of my favourite perfumers, and he certainly made at least two really brilliant things during the decade. I was so taken with this because this one also, I think, highlighted what's best about Etat Libre d'Orange. Sometimes their stories align perfectly, their names, the concept, the person that they collaborate with, and then also the actual olfactory identity of the perfume. Now, it's The Afternoon of a Faun, so obviously it's inspired by Nijinsky and the Ballet Russe and Diaghilev, and the fact that apparently he loved chypre like Mitsuko, it's. I need to try my sample again. I wasn't taken by it first time, says Jessie Lewis. What by this? Yeah, a lot of people weren't. I think this is a sort of fairly divisive one. But as a spicy modern chypre with also a very strong floral note, I thought it's so sensuous and somehow so carnal and yet also so beautiful. Just like, obviously I can't, I haven't watched Nijinsky dance. Why does the Eldo fragrance remind me of A Midsummer Night's Dream, the Shakespeare? Because it's completely got that kind of magical forest, supernatural vibe to it, except this is a lot more overtly sensual, physical, virile, carnal than A Midsummer Night's Dream. I mean, all sorts of things happen in A Midsummer Night's Dream as well, but overall it's a lot more chaste, isn't it? So, because I'm aware of time, let's just very quickly see what Etat Libre say about this. The Faun, a creature of sylvan life, awakens from his midday sleep and contemplates his morning's pursuit of alluring nymphs. In his reflections, the chase takes on libidinous proportions as he seeks to satisfy his desire. It is a beautiful memory, but did it really happen? Images fade, those delicious sensations that tease his mind grow vague and he cannot recapture the events. Reality eludes him, confusion reigns until he is no longer certain if he is remembering fact or fancy. And then it goes on, in 1912, when Nijinsky danced the story in Paris, he created a scandal. Shameless, the critics declared. The carnal subtext of the poem that inspired it had become an explicit expression of a sexual appetite. The ballet went beyond the sensual to a demonstration of powerful virility. In this sense, find the relationship between the suggestive fantasy and the seductive reality, then go ahead and make your own scandal. And official notes, bergamot, cinnamon, forest moss, incense, iris, jasmine, leather, myrrh, pepper, and rose. Always a joy to wear. And actually, when I was making my list, I re-wore this and just fell in love with it all over again. Immortelle is one of the best notes in perfumery, says Serapio, yes, and featured prominently here. So, we haven't done too badly. We managed to do 5. and we're at the 55-ish minute mark, so we're doing okay. Just very, very briefly then, very quickly I should say, to explain what's been going on. I've put together my list of the best perfumes of the decade. I split them up into two because the list was so long. I published part 1 on the blog a few days ago, and so now this is the video counterpart to that blog post. Part 2, so the remainder of the list of the best perfumes of the decade, will appear on the blog within the next 2 days, and then a few days after that we will do a similar video where we maybe smell 4 or 5 other ones from the second part of the list. But also, when part 2 of the blog post appears on Persolaise.com, you will have an opportunity to put forward your own ideas and nominations for what some of your favourites of the decade were, because I suspect that when the second part is published, that's when people will start saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe you haven't mentioned this, and how come you've mentioned this one, and how come you've done another one for this brand, isn't that too many, etc, etc, etc. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in and for making this really, really interesting. I mean, obviously, a lot of you have a lot to say about these. That's when people can start saying Aventus, etc. Yes, that's when people can start saying Aventus. A lot of you have a lot to say about these, and because they've been around in some cases for 10 years, you know them and you're familiar with them, which means that you're able to contribute, which is fantastic. So please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't done so already. Thumbs up, likes, etc. Comments are always welcome. You're going to choose Cologne and Delibile, aren't you? I'm not saying a word, but the list will be out soon. Expect disagreement on that one, says Dream of Me No More. Well, I'm not saying a word. And do check out the link as well to my page on coffee.com. And also I will obviously link to the blog post on Persolaise.com. But for now, I think all that remains for me to say is that in a few hours' time, I will do the blotter update in the comments, in the video description below the video. And so watch out on my social media channels to see when the next episode will be broadcast. Serapio says, lovely video as always. I will tune in the next one for sure. Thank you very much. What would you wear for Christmas? Oh, didn't I answer that? Ambi Rouge. I always wear Ambi Rouge on Christmas Day from Guerlain because, it's just become a tradition now. So thanks again, says Lynn. No, thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, bye now.